Hello and welcome to InfoWhores. We're your hosts. I'm Nat.
I'm San.
And today we are joined by Patrick from the Worst Coast. He's the host and creator of Hemlock Podcast. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Nat. How's it going, ladies?
We're thriving.
Yeah.
So,
I was gonna say, Nat, too. I wanted to just say thank you for having me on the topic of masculinity, because you and I used to act together.
Yes.
So you've seen me apply my own makeup with some degree of skill, and the fact that you think I'm still qualified to chime in on masculinity means a lot. So thanks.
Can you do your wife's makeup?
No, I'm okay. If I'm honest, probably.
oh my gosh, your eyeliner game
we have not
was...
attempted that yet.
No, but
what's that?
Your eyeliner game was strong, I remember.
Yeah. You remember that? Yep, I'm still proud of that.
Do you know how to contour?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
I think
That's
that was
good.
a thing
That's
after.
pretty masculine that you can't contour.
Okay. I must be pretty masculine too, because I also cannot contour. So.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. I don't even know if that was a thing back in our theater days. I've never even heard the word, but.
All right, so I guess the cat's out of the bag. We're talking to a boy about masculinity today, folks. No better person to talk to than a dude. Not only one who identifies as a dude, but who was actually came out of the womb as one. So we're off to a good start here.
Biological facts.
Biological
Yeah.
facts. So we're just going to jump right into our first question for you, Patrick. Dude, what does masculinity mean to you? And who taught you how to be a man? Like, was it friends? Father, culture, religion?
Right.
Was it Justin Trudeau? Just kidding.
Yeah. What was that thing you said the other day? Oh, it's sunny, but it's still a little brisk. Let me go get a coat. I don't know if you saw that guy's clip. Anyways, there's a great guy on TikTok who does Justin Trudeau impressions, and he nails it.
I have to hear.
Yeah.
I have to see this.
Oh yeah, I'll send you guys a link after.
Well,
but,
I don't have TikTok, but
Yeah.
I will do TikTok. To see that.
Yeah, I know the whole Chinese
So-
tie to TikTok makes me wary, but I love the platform still. So.
You know, my dad loves the platform as well, so there's that.
Yeah.
He's 60, so there's that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the spiritual successor to Vine, which breaks my heart that Pet went away the dinosaur. But so what does it mean to be a man?
Yeah, what does masculinity mean to you, and who taught you to be a man?
Starting off with a nice easy question right off the
Yeah,
bat.
sorry about that.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's such a complex question, and I think that's something we could talk about. Especially today, you look at who's talking about that.
It's women.
That's yeah, exactly.
We're desperate.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I think until, and I'll credit Jordan Peterson with, you'll hear me quote him a lot today.
Perfect. I just read the first chapter of his book, so
awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just his second book just came in. Actually, got delivered last week.
20
so I'm
million
excited
more
to start that.
rules.
20 million more rules. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. But so it's obviously like a hugely complex discussion. I don't want to minimize that.
Yeah.
And I credit Jordan Peterson for kind of bringing that back to the surface and like, what does it mean? He's saying a lot to young men, because I think you look at suicide rates and alcoholism rates and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are all things that like significantly impact men more than women these days.
Yeah.
And it's frightening to see. But I think to me, when I think I grew up pretty traditionally conservative, and so I think of, words like strength, courage. Jordan Peterson, JP's big on taking as much responsibility as you can, which I think is a huge
personal
one. That it's like
responsibility.
that might be top of the list for like how like what we're really bad at in society is taking responsibility for things.
Yeah.
We just whine about stuff, but we don't work to make it better in a meaningful way.
Totally.
I think some big ones too is I also had a great it's funny, I learned to be a man. Both my father was an incredible example. And my mother was also a great example. Not that she was manly, but I think what it means to be a man is both sides of the spectrum, right? Like I think not like the gender spectrum, but I mean having what are considered some more feminine traits is really important as well, right?
Yeah.
So things like
You're
like
well-rounded
humility.
in that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really important, I think, and I think that's all part of being a man, even though they're considered more feminine traits. things like humility, things like being vulnerable, right? The whole men don't cry. Yeah, they do. And I think it can be a manly thing to like be willing to cry in front of people when it's about stuff that matters. Now you can go too far into like the safe space culture where men cry for no damn reason.
Like Harry Styles. I think Harry Styles cries all the time. I don't know for sure.
No, but Jordan,
And then uses his skirts to dry the tears.
Yeah.
nice.
So I think I had a really great example of that from both my parents, of like on my dad's side, strength, courage, being a protector, I think is huge, right?
Yeah.
Being a leader, being dangerous. I want to get into that a little later.
Okay.
But having the capacity for violence, and reining that in under nobility and chivalry, right?
That's from your
chivalry,
soda pop days as in The Outsiders.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah.
We played.
Back when I was OG gangster. Yeah.
Oh,
He was in The Outsiders.
Totally. Truth telling is a huge one.
Totally.
Tell the truth, right? I think there's so many. You look at even men in the church and stuff, and there's so many sacrifices we made where we haven't had the courage to tell the truth, and I think that's totally emasculated men in our society. So, yeah, those are kind of the big ones. I guess using more of the adjectives, but like protector, courageous, kind, gentle, that kind of thing. What was the second question? Was who gave me an example of
So
that? Right?
your dad, you mentioned your dad, you mentioned Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. So who taught you to be a man,
Yeah.
in your opinion?
Well,
Yeah.
I think I honestly had a great, like I said, I had a great example from my father. I have a very excellent father who was like all of those things. He's an incredibly strong, been in construction his whole life, just like typical, just strong, quiet man, right? I got to see one of the things I love most about my dad is just even watching his growth throughout my life. Whereas like, so spiritual leadership is a big thing in our family, right?
Totally.
And honestly, I think he would say this himself. My mom kind of took point in that growing up because my dad was working all the time, and so my mom kind of took a role in that. But it was something that was important to my mom for like him to increase his role in that. And so I got to watch as a child as him having the humility to recognize that as perhaps a flaw in his own life, and then work throughout his life to like take a much more prevalent role in the spiritual leadership of our family. Which was for me such a powerful demonstration of like humility and the courage to actually change, and then put it in practice and take that role on more, right? And then my grandpa, my dad's dad, was another phenomenal role model. He actually passed away just over a year ago, literally like 2 weeks before the lockdown. Actually, we went to his funeral. Which I thank God we were actually able to go to his funeral, right?
Yeah. Oh, man.
But he was like I would say one of my best friends. Like I love my grandpa. And he, a little bit of his story that I wanted to share was like, he was a great example. Again, he like was a backhoe operator his whole life, right? But he was like just the kindest, gentlest, like twinkle in his eye, delightful old French person in like I've ever met, right? And one of the things my dad told me this actually when I was much older. I found out my great grandpa actually there was some sexual abuse that my great grandpa was inflicting upon some of the girls in his family, right? And my grandpa, which is super shameful. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I might get you to cut it out because it's something that was like my dad and grandpa were ashamed of, right?
Right.
But I think if they allow me to keep it in the podcast, like it's such a powerful story because my grandpa's response to that was he just they lived in Winnipeg, I believe. They just up and moved. Like he just supplanted his family from Winnipeg, and like there's some toxicity here. I don't want to expose my 3 girls to this.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't want to raise my son in a context where we just kind of like don't talk about this and let it slide, right?
Yeah.
He just uprooted his whole family and left and got the hell out of there, right? So his family was able to start anew, and I think it's that kind of courage and it's that kind of leadership that is so important, right? When you think about even the positive side effects, like the Me Too movement, one of the positive things I did is like, if you see something, don't let it stand, right? If you see like another man acting like a dickhead and being rude or abusive,
Don't be complacent.
or complicit, I would say,
Yeah.
right? Because if you just let it happen, you're complicit in that nonsense, and so I
Absolutely.
think like calling it out getting his family out of there and like teaching my dad through the process, like that's not okay.
And that should be,
I'm not going to let this happen.
And that should be instinctive, right? Too.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
No, and it's interesting that you say all this, because it just speaks to how men are protectors, like inherently, and it's I do feel like that's been lost in 2021. I don't find that it's as commonly encouraged in men to be the protector of women. Like it's kind of like been turned around. I'm a woman, I can protect myself.
But that's the downside of feminism is that like we don't need men.
Exactly, and it's like, well, no, actually. I mean, who knows what could have happened in your family had your grandfather not made that decision, you know, to leave. I mean, it just, it's interesting to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, totally. And just such a practical example of leadership and that protector role, right? That like, that set the standard for my dad's life, that you don't stand by and watch. You don't act like this, first of all.
Yeah.
But you don't become complicit in it. You protect your loved ones from it. You call it out and you get out of there, right?
Totally.
And so, I thought it was, just a story I wanted to share, I think, too, about not only was it my parents directly, they gave me great examples, but like my grandparents and my grandpa, like specifically was just like one of the best men I ever knew.
Props to him.
Yeah. So he's actually the reason I'm typically not a blingy person, but if you guys have seen me with my gold chain, the only reason I started wearing a gold chain was he was never a gift giver. He was like literally he gave us, he's Catholic, so he would give us Knights of Columbus raffle tickets as birthday gifts. And for some reason, this is like, I think it's the last or the second last time I saw him, he gave me this little like tall ship gold chain. And I don't know why, if he just like he knew it was going to go, or he knew it was one of the last times. But anyways, that's why the bling. But excellent and a most excellent man, and I'm so grateful to have known him and had him as an example. I think more people were like my dad and like my grandpa. Man, society would be in like a much better place. Like it really would. That's
so touching. So I have a question. Like, how do you think the definition of masculinity has changed like recently in today's society? Because
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Like, do you think it's changed a lot, or do you think is traditional masculinity under attack right now?
Well, yeah, because it's not called traditional masculinity; it's called toxic masculinity now.
Yes,
preach.
Which I think started off as maybe a good thing, right? Because there are, I mean, and this is the thing, I wouldn't call, the problem I have with the term toxic masculinity is that masculinity is not toxic.
No, it isn't.
And the parts of men that are toxic are not masculine. It's not a masculine trait.
Exactly.
It's not a, it's
toxic
not a masculine
behavior. There's a difference between toxic behavior in either sexes.
Yeah, and I think toxic masculinity is when men are actually not powerful but powerless, because that makes them do irrational things. I mean, school shootings are a perfect example. I mean, sexual assault, all these things. It's like when men feel weak, that's toxic, and that is what enables them to perform these horrible acts or to behave in such a way, you know?
Yeah, but what do you think?
Well, I think like what is masculine? Typically what we call toxic masculinity, like what is that? That's like taking advantage of the weak.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you're like assaulting women or you're being abrasive or whatever it is, right? But it's typically the primary component of toxic masculinity in the way it manifests is taking advantage of weaker people, right?
Yeah, right.
And what is masculine about that? There's nothing. That's cowardly. That's cowardice.
Totally.
That's
being
nonsense,
a bully,
right? So that doesn't make you a man at all. It makes you a twat. Like it makes you a coward, I think. And so to just throw toxic as a modifier into masculinity, I think has perverted a lot of what we think masculinity is.
But I do think there needed to be a bit of a shift. I mean, one of the things is like, the frat boy culture, the bro-y comedians, like there were some issues in some of the cultural acceptances of the way men were looking at women, treating women, and all this stuff.
Totally
but
fair.
I just think that what's happened is the feminist movement has taken over this definition of toxic masculinity, has totally redefined it. It's like, no, masculinity isn't toxic. It's these older notions of, that have...
Yeah. Well, I think they want to erase masculinity.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So any inkling of character that shows any kind of traditional masculinity is like, it has to be erased. You cannot.
No, absolutely. But I mean, also too, I don't know if you listened to our previous episode, What Women Want, but we talked about some of the, some of the actual positive effects of the Me Too movement, for example.
Yeah.
And I just think that kind of piggybacks what I'm saying, because there were good things that came out of that. Like, we should hold people accountable.
Yeah,
totally. For these kinds of things. And I think that the problem is when these cultural things build momentum, they go too far, I guess.
Yeah, they always take it too
They
far.
always take it just a little too far.
Like we as conservatives always get made fun of for using like the slippery slope fallacy, but it's we're especially recently, we've been so often proved right on all of these. Well, if you let gays get married, next thing you know, you're going to be working at like making pedophilia okay. And like,
guess what?
as much as I personally think gay marriage is like totally fine, right? And like the religious concept of marriage and the state concept of marriage should be separate, and gay people should have every right under the government that heterosexual people do that, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
You do have things, even movements actually towards pedophilia in certain areas.
Yep.
And you look at like kind of the radical trans agenda right now. It's like a lot of that slippery slope stuff that conservatives were called crazy 10 years ago.
Conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, exactly. And well, now it's happened. So are they conspiracy theorists or were they prophets, right? And I think too, like that, like there is that slippery slope in the sense that like what used to be called toxic masculinity, like encroached further and further what used to be called traditional masculinity, right?
Totally.
Where it went too far. It seems to always go too far, but yeah.
And that's kind of what Jordan Peterson is like going around talking about right now. That's kind of his MO. He wants to like bring light into the situation about true masculinity as being masculinity, not toxic. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. No, great. It's a great question.
This is interesting. Okay. So Sandra asked you how masculinity has changed in society, whatever, but right now we're living in COVID, which has totally redefined society in general. So how do you think COVID has impacted masculinity? We have a few opinions about this, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Just with some of the maybe virtue signaling that we see, some of the, just some of the behavior.
Let me hear your thoughts on that first.
Well, I mean, I don't know how Sandra feels, but when I see a man in a mask outside, I'm like, he is not, he's not a man. Like,
yeah.
No,
like he cries like Harry Styles, Just kidding.
Like, I'm sorry to be crass, but like, I don't know how women can get it up for dudes that wear double masks or wear a mask while they're out running or riding a bike. Like, it's not happening on this end.
Well, and it kind of speaks to like, if I'm a man and I'm wearing a mask outside, for example, it's like, look at me, look at what I'm doing. I look so cool. I'm saving people.
That's what they're saying. They're saying, look, I'm protecting all these vulnerable people.
But it's like, no, you're wearing a face diaper and you look dumb. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. I think you actually even touched on a larger problem with not even masculinity, but society generally. I think that, we talk about one of the, in Christian culture, the ethos is that pride is one of the greatest sins, right? Mm-hmm. And our culture is founded on pride, right? And I'm not just talking about like gay pride or trans pride, all that stuff.
No,
like,
in general.
The fact that they use that word is troubling to me, actually. But not even though I believe that you should be accepting of all people and loving towards all people, right?
Totally.
The fact that it's celebrated as pride, I think, shows to a further spiritual poison or root in our society. But like almost all the problems in our society right now can be traced back to pride, in the sense that like you have a largely uninformed or misinformed, right? I think the media is one of our greatest, probably our greatest enemy in society today. Yep. Because it's just, and that goes back to even to the masculine thing, tell the truth, right? Is you have a completely misinformed public because of a media that refuses, and the men in media refusing to stand up and tell the truth, right? And they're just so obsessed with furthering their own agenda, their own power, that they lie constantly, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a misinformed public that wants the easiest path to looking virtuous possible. So that comes with like posting a black square on Instagram, or throwing the cause du jour up in your Instagram story, which involves no effort from you, right? Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. It takes nothing. Mm-hmm.
My favorite though, just is I saw a guy wearing like a Black Lives Matter sweater and a Black Lives Matter mask outside. Just outside.
But that's like that's the same instinct, I think, though, is like the same thing that makes us post things on social media with almost complete ignorance on most subjects.
Yeah.
From a desire to look virtuous. It's the same thing that like makes like, what was it, David Hogg tweeted out? I have a segment actually on my show called We Live in a Clown World, and I was going to talk about this. But David Hogg was literally tweeted out, he's like, basically expressing a hesitation about I've been vaccinated. I got vaccinated right away because I'm a good person, whatever. But I want to keep wearing my mask so people don't confuse me as a conservative. Which is like that is just virtue signaling, prideful nonsense, right? And so it's the same instinct, is like, even if you've been vaccinated and you're not putting people in danger anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just signaling your own virtue to society, and that just comes from an arrogant, lazy,
indulgent.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like our culture loves immediacy, right?
Yeah,
it needs to have things now, and we've applied that to virtue. We're not willing to put in the work and the discipline to be actually and truly virtuous and actually do real work to help causes we feel passionate about. We look for the easiest path to them, which is just signaling it on social media or wearing a mask outside.
Yeah, totally.
Which, if you've done any look into the actual science, makes zero damn sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because there's nothing contrarian to what people like David Hogg are saying. Like, that's the most popular opinion on the left and mainstream media, right?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
How is that brave? It's not at all.
Exactly.
No, and my husband sent me a quote by St. Thomas Aquinas. Is that it?
Thomas Aquinas.
Sorry.
Yep.
Oopsies.
One of my favorites.
And
That's okay.
It says, effeminacy is the unwillingness of a man to put aside pleasure in order to pursue what is difficult. So,
Wow.
So,
love that.
Episode's over. Just kidding.
Yeah. Drop the mic. That's it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that is the issue with men right now. It's like David Hogg was the perfect example of this. It's the look at me. I feel good doing this. Blah, 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 blah. It's just, I think that's what's lacking in men. It's putting aside pleasure and, like you said, telling the truth, standing for the truth.
Yeah. It's the unwillingness to put in like the discipline and the ethic and the hard work it requires to be truthful and to say things that are meaningful and well-founded.
But also the risk, right? Because traditionally, dudes are kind of, they're risk takers. They like
danger.
No, they're born that way. Like, boys are jumping out of trees and like flipping
off buildings. Just kidding.
No,
just kidding.
Parkour.
But you said earlier on the call you had something you wanted to bring up about danger. Did you want to speak to that now, Patrick?
Yeah, sure. I think so. Like Jordan Peterson talks about, basically, he's like having the capacity for malevolence reined in by civilization, right? By being civilized and noble. And I think I mean, have you guys heard of the cycle? Sorry, have you guys heard of what a toxically masculine thing to say? Have you ladies heard?
Go over.
Have you ladies heard of the cycle of regimes? You've heard that term?
No.
So the cycle of regimes is basically, you've probably heard the actual thing, if not that term for it, but it's basically just the thing that says strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men, right?
Deep.
Deep.
I need a poster.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that, because we are right in the middle of that cycle where weak men are creating bad times.
Oh, right? Hallelujah. Amen. Yeah.
And so I think the reason for that is, what was that? I think actually another quote from Jordan Peterson. I was watching a video on him today about masculinity just in preparation for this. And he said, there's nothing, and this is so interesting, there's nothing more dangerous than a weak man. Right? Because a weak man can't stand for truth. All he can do is lie and virtue signal and like, just that wrecks society. When you have no one telling the truth, right? Whether it comes to like Black Lives Matter or COVID or the Israel-Palestine thing right now is a big one. Like, when you have so much falsehood and so much misinformation, you can never find real solutions, right? It destroys our ability to even talk about that as a society rationally, right? And so what's happening is that weak men are creating bad times, and And what stops that? You look at people. I mean, like the U.S. gets so much flack for having like a outrageously large military, right?
Right.
I would venture to say that is maybe the main reason for the peace we've enjoyed since World War II in the world, for the large. And I know there's pockets of wars and there's stuff the U.S. has done that people blame, but global peace for such a long period of time. In most of the world, and then even at a societal level, right? Like the reason you have guys running around sexually assaulting people is because you don't have men brave enough to stop, or strong enough to stop them, right? Or to speak out against that, like I talked about with my dad and my granddad.
Yeah.
It's only strong men that can stop malevolent weak men, and it's only strong men that can have a capacity for danger, a capacity for malevolent. C.S. Lewis, right, talks about Aslan as not tame but good, right?
Yep.
It's only strong men with that capacity for danger, but the nobility to restrain it, that can serve as a check in society to the tyrannical idiots we have running around right now, right?
So good.
Yeah.
So
being dangerous is a good thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
But I have a question. Do you think women appreciate masculinity still?
Good ones do.
But what if no? But I would argue that not good ones actually
they do secretly
appreciate it. No.
Completely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's such a desire, and I think there's I can't quote them right now like offhand, but I've seen studies and articles done on this that. I mean, you can look at the marriage rates, right, and how long it takes anybody to get married. It's like it's so hard to find suitable mates these days, right? In the sense that like women cannot find strong men, and men cannot find virtuous women, right? And so it takes us longer and longer to get married and find them, and then we give up and become promiscuous, and it just spirals downwards constantly.
Well, it's so funny because all of these like accepting like cultural and societal things are so progressive, they're regressive, because now there's just a bunch of single miserable people out there who can't find a mate. It's
totally great episode, by the way.
We've shot ourselves in the foot. But
no, seriously.
So call to action then for men. What do you think, Patrick, men should do in today's society to be masculine and stay masculine?
Man the hell up. Like,
totally.
Actually, I wrote down one of my favorite verses on this is 1 Corinthians 16:13. And just from like a biblical perspective, right? Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love.
Love it.
Like that I think just condenses the whole thing. It's like, first of all, there's that call to action to be watchful and be alert, right? Jordan Peterson talked a lot about that, about like attention, right? In the Christian ethic, we call that worship, right? What are you paying attention to? What are you giving your attention to? What are you giving your worship to? Are you on guard, right? To be a protector, you have to be aware of what's going on. I think men have totally just like gotten rid of our responsibility to be aware of societal change. Right, we say that all good, like all that's required for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you have to a point. Is like, and maybe it's the fault of conservatism too. Is we'd rather just like stick our heads down, run our businesses, live our lives, and not engage in that. Which is a noble thing, right? But if we're doing that without being aware of what the culture is doing and where the culture is taking us, and not actively fighting against it, just because we were closing a blind eye to it, that doesn't help anyone either, right? So it has that benediction to be alert, standing firm in the faith, your convictions. You're looking at pastors during COVID. I know you guys feel really passionate about that, which I love. You're talking about even standing up to, we're putting like BLM and rainbow flag stickers in the windows of churches and stuff. And like, that's fine to an extent where you like want to make people feel welcome and stuff.
Slippery slope.
But exactly, yeah. If you don't have the courage to parse out the nuance of what like scripture says about things like homosexuality, or even other things like we don't have the courage to call out major sins in our church, like things like gossip or like or cowardice, right? Cowardice is a big one. Like the church has been raising cowards and safe men for a long time. I think we're complicit in that as well. And so just having that, standing firm to your convictions and having the courage to stand up for the truth when it's not popular, right? Christ said we'd be hated in this world, so we got to be prepared for that. Act like men, be strong, right? That's that capacity for violence, but reined in.
And stop eating soy.
Yeah. Stop being the damn soy boys, man.
Stop eating.
Wow.
Soy.
Yeah. And then let all that be done. All that you do be done in love, right? And that's where I think like my dad and grandpa were such great examples of like incredibly kind, gentle. Like you watch the way they treat their grandkids or pets in the house and women, and like they're just so masculine and manly. Like it's just to see a man like being gentle but confident in himself is like, to me, that's one of the best things in the world, right? Like I think that if I was a woman, I'd call that sexy, right? And I think that's just like such an example is when a man can be loving and kind and gentle and vulnerable, and dangerous at the same time. I think that kind of sums it up for me. But
I think it's really unfortunate that so many young boys don't have good role models. Like, how many young 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds have never heard of Jordan Peterson, for example,
right?
Or were raised by a single mom, or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I got some, like I think we both maybe got a bunch of flack for this, because I was listening to your guys' episodes on the Black Lives Matter stuff recently. And it's one of the things I took a lot of flack for was just talking about how there's a lot of, what's that?
Talking about fatherlessness.
Yeah. There's a lot of like incredibly intelligent, even black commentators talking about that, how that is much more of a root cause of all this stuff than police brutality. And statistically, that's true, right? Yeah. And again, I can't like pretend to be pretend that I've been a black person, whatever, living in that. But the stats do not bear out the police brutality narrative, but they do bear out fatherlessness is so easily, it's one of the most easily attributable things to things like not graduating school, right? Going to prison, ending up on drugs, all that kind of poverty, all that stuff, right? There's been study after study of every race that has been done talking about the fatherlessness effects, right?
yeah,
Totally.
In any race. So I think, I'm completely blessed to have incredible examples, and I pray that our world creates more of them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for being on our show and giving us your male perspective. It was a little toxic, but we forgive you. I'm just kidding.
Wouldn't be doing my job if it wasn't a little bit, right? Yeah.
Before we wrap up, where can our 10 listeners find you?
Yeah. Hey, you gotta start somewhere. I noticed actually a pretty good listener bump after our first episode together on my show, so don't
you're welcome.
discount yourselves.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. So Hemlock Podcast pretty much everywhere, right? So Hemlock, well, I mean, it's the poison that Socrates drank to kill himself. So if you're looking at how to spell it, that's what you're looking for.
Love it. Optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. They made him drink that because he got the death sentence for basically philosophizing to the young men of Athens. And anyways, hero of mine. But so Hemlock Podcast, we're actually looking at launching a website soon that I'm just about done building, called hemlockpodcast.com. But yeah, Hemlock Podcast on Instagram and on Apple Podcasts and stuff. You and I both talk about the 5-star stuff.
Yep.
That means a lot. Like,
give him a 5-star on Apple Podcasts.
5 stars are great. Give these ladies 5 stars and go. I'm on YouTube too. I know. For just if you can, listeners of the InfoWhores, you beautiful people.
Well, 10 of you.
when they start their YouTube eventually as well, just go and like all their videos on YouTube. And if you want, go like all my videos on YouTube.
Yes.
Because even our video, ladies, the last episode we put out, already has like, I think a 7-to-3 dislike ratio, and I put it out a couple days ago. But because there's a bunch of leftists that I think just are subscribed to me that like just watch when I put out a video and just dislike it without watching it. But
badge of honor, badge of honor. Love it.
So a little help there would be great.
All right, everyone, go help a brother out, a real man.
Oh, this was fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you, ladies, for picking a good topic. Like I think this is something we need to talk more about, and props to you for having the guts to talk about it. It's good stuff.
We love men, so no problem. Just kidding.
Hey,
okay. No,
cheers.
love them.
Cheers.
Okay. Seb, you can stop recording now.
You do the bass. I'll do.
Yes.
Right on. That was fun.
You do the bass.
Yeah,
I'll do.
Definitely. That was awesome.
I'll do the third, and you do the fifth.
I'm not as talented at music as you guys.
Should we do a bye?
Close one, Seb. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Bye.
No, Patrick was supposed to start. That's good.
Oh, okay. Let's try that again. Okay.
Do you want me to do like nice and light?
Thanks
and
everyone
bassy?
for listening.
Bye,
We're
bye,
InfoWhores
bye.
and Hemlock Podcast. Bye.
Again, we were supposed to start with the
love it.
bass. Whatever. This was fun.
Oops.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's Hemlock Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Tell them to subscribe, because if you loved it, then they're going to love it too, obviously. Also, head on over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps us a lot with the charts. And if you're not going to leave us 5 stars, then forget about it. Don't worry about it and enjoy the rest of your day. Lastly, head on over to the hemlockpodcast.locals.com to become a supporter and receive access to exclusive content and ad-free versions of the Hemlock Podcast. Love you so much for listening. Let's continue to ride out this increasingly insane world with irreverence and joy. This is your host, Patrick Jolliker, and much love, y'all. Peace.